Everybody, thanks for joining us today for our presentation on MicroTiles LED. We're going to be recording the presentation, so we just wanted you to be aware of that. And if you could mute your phone, that would be greatly appreciated, or your computer. And once again, thanks for joining. So let's get started. Christie understands the challenges that integrators and customers all face with the traditional LED product. So we developed this game-changing solution, MicroTiles LED. And this presentation gets into depth on the product. It's a follow-up on our presentation that we did a couple of weeks ago that you can find a version of on YouTube. Today we'll explore a number of the key features in great detail that differentiate MicroTiles LED. I'm sure most of you know us quite well, but for any of those who don't, Christie is a committed partner, and we've been collaborating with well-recognized brands and industry leaders for many years. We're also recognized as an LED leader, and we have a team of engineers that are focused on setting new standards and developing innovative products and processes around LED. You can certainly rely on us for technical expertise and to help you out on any LED project that we work with you on. I'm Dave Veroba, and I'm responsible for product marketing at Christie, and I'm here with Ted Romanowitz, our Senior Product Manager for LED. Ted's responsible for the direction of our Christie LED product line, as well as his key focus, of course, is MicroTiles LED, our industry leading and differentiated product. Today we'll get into details, but before we get into details, I'll talk a little bit about the overview of the product for those of you who may be fairly new to it. Ted's going to get into the key capabilities around visual performance, design creativity, system architecture, and he'll talk about mission critical features of the product, as well as the intuitive user interface. Then we'll close off briefly with a summary of Christie's LED value prop and lineup, and open it up to questions for you. And feel free to drop questions in the queue along the way, and we will address them at the end. MicroTiles LED are smaller, brighter, and more powerful and flexible than any LED video wall product on the market today. There is no better solution to deliver amazing optical performance. And we're working with a 12-bit 4K at 120 Hertz input sources, an HDR10 compliant product. It's got integrated image processing, scaling, and simple switching as well to deliver an unmatched image. So the visuals are stunning. The cabinet-free design opens up new possibilities, and there's nothing like it on the market. Our cabinet is essentially, the tile is cabinet-free, and the size of it is about half the size of a traditional product. And that combined with our ADA compliant QuickMount ensures that you can create displays that are in unique shapes and sizes like no other on the market. 90-degree inside-outside corners with very small gaps, and convex or concave curves at the tightest radius on the market. The platform offers a lot of creativity and design out-of-the-box opportunity. The cabinet-free tiles, as I mentioned, are really small. The QuickMount system is also very unique and ensures that you can assemble the wall in about half the time of a traditional wall. You can even offset the tiles by as little as 1 pixel, and there's no one on the market that can do that. So that allows you a lot of new opportunities for design. And some of the key differentiated architectural features of the physical product itself include the fact that you only have a single power over Ethernet cable per tile, and that's delivering the video and the power. And that's all the wiring that goes on with assembling a tile. The modules are also click and go. There's no cables to connect. There's no XYZ adjustments. They simply attach magnetically, as does the chassis that they attach to. And there's absolutely no leveling required once you've set up the QuickMount system. So it nets out to a lot of savings for you and your customer in terms of time time of the installation and time to the switching on the product. As I mentioned, we understand the challenges that traditional LED have created or represent. And so we've taken this uncompromised approach to re-engineering and rethinking LED itself. So the product is designed to work smarter, whether it's installation that we've already touched on a bit, and Ted will get into detail on these as well, but also maintenance, servicing, and the operation itself. It just works smarter, it works easier, it's a lot easier for you and a customer to manage the wall. The alignment, as I said, makes it really easy to assemble, and the fact that you can move modules around without impacting the visual of the wall is also fairly unique in the industry. And before we get into the details, I just wanted to go back to the design components, so the components of the solution itself. So there is a chassis which is second from the bottom right, and that's the silver piece there. That holds the modules. And on the far right, there are 3 modules that would fit into a chassis. In addition to that, there's an octroller, which are essentially the brains of 8 tiles, and those 8 tiles are controlled by the octroller, which is remotely placed and can be up to 20 meters away. From there, you've simply got the more traditional pieces, the wall controller and the power rack shelf and rectifiers as well. There is the other piece that's totally differentiated, and that's the QuickMount System. So there's a mounting plate that you can see on the right over here. This is the metal piece. There's wall anchors that there are 2 of shown down here, and that's really the only leveling that goes on the wall itself. In fact, when you mount the plates, you only need 2 of them to create an HD wall at 1.25 millimeter. It's really that simple. And once it's up and running, it's very easy to manage. So with that, I'm going to pass things over to Ted to get into some more detail on the product and to talk further on the how the components come together to give you the best experience.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you so much, and welcome everybody. Good morning or afternoon, as the case may be. We're really excited to talk to you about MicroTiles LED because, we really did design this from the ground up, to improve your experience, whether you're an integrator partner, a consultant, or an end user. We really wanted to make all of your experiences improved. And a big part of that, is the visuals, right? Because you pay a premium for, direct view LED technology versus LCD. And, we have really optimized the visual performance. Let me explain that a little bit more on the next slide. So, one of the most important things to us is, to make sure that the content is reproduced accurately and vividly. So exactly as the content producer intended. So we, went with a standards-based approach for HDR10 for broad, luminance, high brightness, broad range, and ranging from the darkest darks to the brightest whites. So our system, as Dave mentioned, is compatible with 12-bit sources, which really expands the HDR luminance. And, again, we have we can interface with the best-in-class Pro AV sources up to 4K UHD input, 12-bit, 120 hertz, up to 444 chroma subsampling. So I'll explain this in a little bit, but it's outstanding. And then, the super high brightness allows you to have great visuals, even in high ambient light situations like atriums and, maybe boardrooms or other locations, lobbies that have floor-to-ceiling windows. Let's go to the next slide. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down each of these and speak to them in more depth. And, really for us, especially with brand conscious companies and really for the end user to be able to enjoy the content as the original producer intended. This is exactly why we went with the standards, compliant HDR10 approach. So we use, SMPTE 2084 PQ as well as standard gamma curves. In addition, we use the EDID metadata that's provided and adjust the content so it is as the producer intended. In addition, we can utilize custom EDIDs, like for example, perhaps you don't want it as bright, or perhaps you want to oversaturate the colors for even more dramatic effect. You can create your own custom EDIDs. So you can either have it as the producer intended, or as the end user prefers. It's kind of a balance of both approaches. You get to decide. In terms of HDR, we have a really broad range. From the darkest blacks, we're calibrated from 0.07 nits all the way up to 1,000 nits. So a really, really super high dynamic range. And this is really illustrated by the images on the right. It shows the dramatic differences between 4K HDR content on the left half versus the non-HDR. So, one of the things you have to be really careful with is that, some of the other LED displays in the industry they claim HDR, but it's only compatible, right? It'll play the signal back. It doesn't really fully represent the content as the left half of this picture shows. You really want that experience. If you're going to pay for HDR, you ought to get HDR, and we respect that and deliver it. So next slide. And color is an important part of the HDR experience as well. We have 4 versions right now of MicroTiles LED. It's available in 1.25 and 1.5 millimeter pixel pitches. And we have 2 series. The Series 40, which you can see on the chart on the right, it shows you in red the Series 60 color space. And, which is truly 100% of Cinema P3 color, which is a key part of the, what is intended to be delivered in the HDR realm. A lot of other manufacturers only have, let's say, 600 nits or 500 nits, and they're less than even NTSC 1987. So yeah, they may be able to play the signal back, but you won't get that high dynamic range that the content was created to really enjoy. You won't get the full experience. Our Series 40, just so you know, is a little bit more, of a price savings, and it is 100% of NTSC 1987, which is another key standard. A lot of broadcasters like that one in their studio. So again, we give you, your choice of which color space is important to you. We also integrate some really wonderful cinema quality, cinema grade image processing. We have 16x grayscale performance, and this really minimizes the the dithering, minimizes the transitions between shades of different colors, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. It also has an integrated professional grade Pro AV grade scaler that does 16x up and 20x down. Our factory calibration system calibrates both color and brightness to more than 97% uniformity. And actually, the shipments that we've measured lately have been exceeding 98% of uniformity. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right, and another big piece of image quality is you have to have the bandwidth in the system to deliver that experience from the source all the way to the very pixel. And that's exactly what we did. So, a lot of the other competitive products in the industry, you have to, bring the image in, you have to compress it, send it along the wire to the wall, decompress it, and then get it, distributed out to the cabinets. And, we have a sufficient bandwidth, more than 8 gigabytes per second throughout our entire system. So that's how we get to the ability to, deliver up to 4K, up to 120 hertz, up to 12-bit, and up to 444. So, really, it's the only limitation is the input that you're using to put the content into our system. Once that happens, it's truly lossless and low latency as well. I mentioned a little bit about the image processing. So, again, this is a, kind of something you need to be educated on, because, a lot of people in the industry, a lot of competitors of ours claim, 14 bits and all of that. And, really they're only able to accept 8 bits in. And, what we're able to do is accept up to 12 bits in and do 14 bits of processing. So that gives you 4.4 trillion colors. In addition, I mentioned the image processing that adds an additional 8 bits. So that means a total of 18. So that's a remarkable 18,000 trillion colors. It's a lot. So, again, impressive. It can really, be seen, with the naked eye. It's a wonderful experience. And I, really look forward to getting back out on the road soon. And having, the MicroTiles LED out there to show you so you can see it and believe it for your own eyes. Next slide. And it's not just about creating a wonderful experience out of the box, because that's not good enough for us, right? At Christie, we want to make sure that your experience is optimized visually for the entire lifetime of the product. I mentioned that we do proprietary calibration to very high, more than 97% uniformity of brightness and color. So you can interchange any module board anywhere on the wall, no problem. We also have a patented AutoMatch capability, probably anti-aging capability, that looks at the performance of the LEDs in brightness and color as they naturally degrade over time. This is just a limitation of the physical LEDs. This is true across the entire industry, but not a lot of manufacturers are talking to you about it. So as LEDs decrease in brightness and color over time, you have to come back maybe on an annual basis and recalibrate them to keep them looking their best. With our system, we have sensors built into the wall, and it basically looks at that and maintains the high uniformity as the LEDs naturally degrade over time. In addition, let's say you run the wall for a year or two, so the LEDs have degraded somewhat, and all of a sudden you might have an LED go out. So you want to, swap out one of the module boards, which is easily done from the front, and you put in the new one that's been sitting on a shelf in a storage closet. Of course that's going to have better performance because it hasn't been used for 2 years. What our system does is it recognizes that new serial number of that module board. It'll actually degrade its performance to be consistent and perfectly blend with the others on the wall. It's quite an amazing thing to see. Next slide. And now I want to talk a little bit about design creativity. This is a display. We called it the Serpentine Wall that we showed around quite a bit last calendar year. It highlights not only concave and convex curves on the same wall, but it's a little bit hard to see right there in the middle. There's actually a flat section. So we can, this architecture can do it all. So let's talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And so with this architecture, it really unleashes your design creativity. It supports both concave and convex curves at any angle from, a fraction of a degree all the way up to 90-degree inside and outside curves. Because the tile size is smaller, it's 240 by 270 millimeters, and that's about a quarter of the typical size. So it's about half of the diagonal and about a quarter the size of a typical LED cabinet out there in the industry today. So, what this means is you can have much, much tighter radiuses, and I'll talk about that. The small size also allows for, smaller dimensional increases. Like if you need to fit a very specific space, because the tiles are smaller, you can fit a larger proportion of the space that you're trying to fill. We can also do all kinds of physical installations, from self-standing, flat and curved, hanging, flying, any kind of three-dimensional shapes. Both landscape and portrait are supported, and our integrated processing that I was talking about allows you to offset the tiles, not by a full increment of a tile, but by as little as a single pixel. Next slide. And so let's talk a little bit more about the mechanical piece of this architecture. So if you look at the far right two pictures, this shows curves, convex and concave. Because of the small 14-inch diagonal size, you can have tighter radiuses. So what we recommend for a kind of a seamless, smooth arcing curve is 3 degrees or a maximum of 5. Somewhere in that range gives you a perfectly seamless curve. And that's important, right? Because that's why you pay more for an LED wall. And again, even with 3 to 5 degrees, you can get a nice tight radius. And compared to our competition, to if you have a certain radius that you want to hit, we can easily do that with MicroTiles LED versus, like let's say at 5 degrees. To accomplish that same radius with a 27-inch cabinet, the angle between each cabinet would have to be 10 degrees, twice as much. And, basically, over 5, as I mentioned, it becomes more of a faceted display. You can see some of the seams, faceted like the ring on a wedding or the diamond on a wedding ring. So, it's not as good as an experience. If facets are okay, we can, again, go from anywhere from, a fraction of a degree all the way up to 90-degree corners, which is illustrated in the top left picture. This shows a perfect 90-degree outside corner. Very, very difficult to do with LED technology. What's even more impressive is that we're able to do it with a seam, a corner seam that's less than 5 millimeters wide. So, compared to our competition, where they require 15 millimeters or more. So you can really see the separation between the two planes. So, to be able to do that with hardly any seam visible is quite incredible. So, we have a Christie custom solution team that can help you with the mechanical design of your dream installation, whether that be convex or concave, outside or inside corners, self-standing, flying, standing, flying, hanging. As well as columns, whether squared or curved, see-through, any kind of see-through rectangular shape, arches, even stair steps with offsets as small as a single pixel. So it's quite amazing, the capability. And, we really look forward to, having you collaborate with our custom fulfillment team to do a design that meets your needs. Next slide, please. Now I want to talk a little bit about system architecture, but before I do, I want to really just highlight one thing on this picture. And, this is a Christie microtile wall being installed in Japan last September. And you'll notice that the chassis are on, as well as two of the three module boards on every chassis. What you see hanging down, because obviously Japan is a earthquake zone, those are the tethers, safety tethers, which are optional. For a nominal cost, you can have this capability if you're in an earthquake zone, and it just protects the modules from flying off if there's quite a severe earthquake. I do want to assure you that they're magnet attached and can, stay secure even with a 2G force. But, sometimes like with our entertainment customers, they want to do like a 30-degree or 45-degree lean of the wall towards the customer, or maybe even, hanging from the ceiling. In those cases, it's also a very good idea to have the tether implemented. So let's go to the next slide. So Dave mentioned a little bit about the QuickMount system. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit more. We kind of covered the tile design and the Octroller and some of our other trainings, but the installation system includes a template. We call it the wallpaper. And so what you do is you get your site prepped, you pull all the wires, and on the wall you apply plywood and get it all prepped and painted. When that's done, you put up the installation template, and this becomes a permanent part of the installation. So what this does, it really informs the location and the type of wall anchor that is appropriate at each location. So it's really easy. You just unpack the wall anchors, you put them up in the right places, and you drill them right into the wall. Again, this is one of the reasons why you can install a MicroTiles LED in about half the time of a typical LED cabinet design. So the sheet anchors give you about almost 0.8 of a inch of Z-axis adjustability, or 20 millimeters. In addition to that, we have optional shims that go, that extend the wall anchor in increments of 6 meters or an additional 1/4 inch. So it's really quite easy to go to over an inch, or, even to 1.5 inches of Z-axis adjustment, which is incredible. Most LED walls out there just have only 2 or 3 millimeters of adjustability. So then you have to do quite a bit of work with shimming and getting the wall into perfect planarity. With our system, you don't have to worry about that as much. These optional shims really make it quite easy. So what you do is you attach the sheet, which I'll talk about in a minute, and you do a laser level. Why don't we go to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about the sheets. So the sheets are laser cut piece of metal, very rigid, very precise location. So they magnetically attach to the anchors, which I was showing, onto on top of the wallpaper. There's cross ties to get perfect X and Y adjustment, and then they magnetically attach to the anchors. The anchors have all that adjustability. So you use a laser level to get everything perfect. And then you lock the wall anchor Z-axis adjustment. And then you lock all of the sheets to their respective wall anchors. Once that's done, no additional X, Y, or Z adjustment is required during installation. The sheets, probably the chassis and the module boards are robotic manufactured to such amazing micron tolerances that you don't need to adjust them. They just click and go. So let's go to the next slide, please. I think we'll keep talking about more of the architecture because, not only is it easy to install, but we've done a lot of work to, look at the architectural challenges that are involved in a system design. So one of the key things is we wanted to remove a lot of the complexity as well as the heat and the noise from the wall itself and move those to an easy to service, accessible location. For example, our remote power supplies can be located up to 100 meters or over 300 feet from the wall. They're telecom grade, N+1 reliability, automatic failover, and hot swappability. So, these are really preferred when there's no power circuits at the wall, as is in many cases. So, they run at full efficiency, more than 96% efficiency at 240 volts, and then they're slightly degraded, but also compatible with 120 volt circuits. The circuit breakers are located on the front panel, which makes it a lot easier, if, in the case where you have to, reboot them or something, power up and power down, maybe if you lose power or something in the building. Next slide. Now I want to talk about our controllers, which are also a remote aspect of our design. So Christie was a founding partner of the SDVOE Alliance, and we're also the industry's first to develop an LED control system that integrates this technology into it. That's the E1100. What this means is with our Christie Terra SDVOE solution, you have almost unlimited extensibility. You can have up to unlimited inputs and as many as 32 individual windows in a 4K section. So, it's an amazing, extensible, flexible solution. There's quite a bit of training available on Christie University and webinars recorded that talk all about our Terra solution. As I mentioned, our controllers are both capable of 4K 120 hertz, up to 12 bits, up to 120 hertz, and up to 444. The only limitation is the bandwidth of the input signal itself. The controllers include a simple switching between multiple inputs. This eliminates the need for a third-party switcher. It also has a professional grade scaler, as I mentioned, 16x up, 20x down. So that you don't need a third-party solution. And it has a fiber optic extender, QSFP active extender, so you can locate your sources as far as 10 kilometers or 6 miles from the video wall itself. These things just simplify the entire system design. You can rest assured that they're validated for compatibility and interoperability in Christie's engineering lab. So you don't have to do your own validation testing in your facility. It just works. You can trust Christie. It's also compatible with many of the popular control systems out there. So, the E100 has dual HDMI and dual display port. Both are HDCP 2.2 compatible, and it gives you input failover, from HDMI 1 to HDMI 2, as well as DP1 to DP2. Conversely, I did mention that the E1100 does have the SDVOE input, as well as it does have the Quad 3G SDI, which is a really important connectivity option for our broadcast customers. So really, really nice on that side for them. Next slide. And combined with our other Christie products, we can design a custom solution that meets even the most challenging workflows. We've got the Christie Spider X80, the most powerful processor in the industry today. We also have the Christie Pandora's Box media server, which has just been recently upgraded to 10 bits and is compatible with active 3D content, because we have a version of MicroTiles LED that does active 3D at 60 hertz an eye. So the Pandora's box provides those signals and that compatibility. If anyone saw it at ISE by chance, our feedback is many customers said this was the best 3D experience they've ever had. It was really quite successful. And we're just really bummed that Infocom is canceled this month, but we look forward to getting this out, for your customers that are interested in 3D active technology. Mentioned Christie Terra, and also the fact that we develop and manufacture our own LED controllers specific to MicroTiles LED. So this whole system is from Christie and validated, certified. It will work. One point of contact, and the unlikely event that something goes wrong, we'll take care of you. Next slide, please. Now I want to talk about mission critical capabilities, because, actually in the last year, as we've been, doing installations, we've had quite a bit of success in mission critical government, military applications, where 24/7 availability and long lifetime are critical aspects of the design. So let me talk to you a little bit about that. And this is a utility situation room where all the executive team can come together during a crisis and solve problems, prioritize, and direct resources. So a really good example. Next slide. So I mentioned the telecom grade power supplies. Remote power supplies come with N+1 redundancy, automatic failover, hot swappability. That provides a lot of mission critical reliability. Our LED controllers also have like signal failover from either 60 hertz HDMI or DisplayPort interfaces, and multiple level of redundancies, which I'll talk about on the next slide. The QSFP active fiber connectivity provides, it's a very robust signal, and also provides security, again, critical to military and government customers. So let's go to the next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit about simplicity. Dave mentioned, a little bit about this. And, what we did is we wanted to compare and contrast a typical 27-inch LED cabinet on your left versus a MicroTile LED on your right. So if you really, go for it and tear one apart, a 27-inch cabinet, you'll find a cluster of metal mechanical pieces, screws, bolts, nuts, just all kinds of crazy things, as well as a plethora of circuit boards, control systems, receiver cards, as well as the, many times the internal power supplies, and all kinds of things, literally crammed inside this cabinet, as well as almost 20 cables that are required inside the cabinet, in addition to many others outside the cabinet, to loop through the power and video signal across the entire LED video wall. So very complex, very difficult. Many of the competitors don't like to tell you this, but to fully deconstruct and get to certain things like the power supply, you have to, tear the entire cabinet apart, and sometimes even remove it from the wall to have rear access. It's quite lengthy to do that. In comparison, take a look at the simplicity of the MicroTile LED on the right. So the chassis is a metal piece, aluminum, casted aluminum, and only has a single circuit board inside that's covered. That's what we call our TOBE, or tile on board electronics. It has 3 connectors quick connectors that allow the module boards to connect, the 3 module boards. And again, these are robot manufactured to such, amazing micron tolerance that, no X, Y, or Z adjustment is needed as you, assemble the chassis to the wall and the module boards to the chassis. This is the magic behind the design, and it's a single cable that connects the tile to the Octroller. So let's talk about the system architecture, right? Let's go to the next slide, please. This shows the wiring diagram for an entire full HD wall at 1.25. So it's a 10 by 5 array or 50 tiles. So it shows a single source, Pandora's box, connected into our E1100 controller. You'll see the active cables in blue, one out from the controller to the first Octroller in the chain, and then a second one that goes out from the last Octroller back into the into the controller itself. This creates a closed loop situation because you use passive short fiber optic cables between each subsequent Octroller, and doesn't matter which cable fails, you always have connectivity. You won't lose that. The telecom grade remote power supplies can each handle 2 Octrollers. Octo means 8. So each Octroller handles up to 8 tiles. Each power supply handles 2 Octrollers or up to 16 tiles. It really makes it simple math when you do system design. And then again, a single power over Ethernet cable, from the Octroller to the subsequent tile. So when you look at the number of cables, 30, that are required for a typical 27-inch cabinet, if you take 2 27-inch cabinets, they have the same amount basically 2 cabinets do as 50 tiles in our system. So it's really remarkable how simplified that we've made this. And again, fewer points of failure means more reliability. Next slide. I promised to talk about redundant wiring capabilities. I've also, I've mentioned, this, the single input on that last slide with closed loop redundancy, kind of going up into, higher and higher grades of redundant wiring methodologies. You can go to dual input cables in a closed loop, top left. You can go to bottom left, redundant sources in a closed loop, redundant synchronized sources in a closed loop, I should say. And then you can have redundant controllers in a closed loop. And if you really want true 27 availability, the utmost design would be redundant sources, redundant controllers in the closed loop. That provides the highest level of failover in the system. So again, we can design to whatever level that you need as an end customer. Next slide, please. I can assure you that all of our components in our system are commercial grade, and they're designed and manufactured by Christie Digital according to the highest Pro AV standards. They're commercial grade. All of them are capable of 24/7 operation at a 24/7 duty cycle at a lifetime of 100,000 hours to half brightness. That's at full brightness, full white. That's not typical of an end user's content. So what we're seeing is, it's quite easy to get 2 or 3 times that, especially in a control room, which is typically only 30% brightness. You can get close to 30 years of operational capacity on the system itself. Of course, we'll stand by it. Our Christie brand is known for that. We'll provide design, installation, stand by our product with 24/7 customer support, as well as on-site service capabilities with our professional services team. Next slide. All of that basically gives you a huge amount of peace of mind, which is important if you're making an investment like this. Now I want to talk about the web interface, because one of the things that as we deconstructed the whole idea of an LED video wall, one of the things that we realized was, the experience of interfacing, of making changes to the wall as it stood before was really kludgy. You had to take a laptop, download software, then take your laptop and tether it to the wall, and use a system that was, quite often developed in Chinese and translated to English or other languages. And it's very difficult to use. Let's talk a little bit about this. We'll start on the next slide. Because what we wanted to do is deliver a really intuitive experience that even the most basic end user could appreciate and utilize with very, very little training. So how we deliver on that is we have moved away from our own software. Instead of downloading software to a laptop or desktop, you're able to use any HTML5 browser to access the LED controllers from anywhere in the world that you have an internet connection to the wall. And it can go with any platform that you want. And I'll explain all that in a second. So it's designed with multiple languages, multiple, kind of both North American and Europeans in mind, kind of our best practices in terms of sprint software planning. And we have done extensive hardening, quality testing, validation, and bug fixing before we release any of the software to the public to be utilized. So really, really wonderful experience. It also allows you to interface with the wall either very close up or, from a distance. If you happen to be there in person, it really eliminates the need for sneaker net. You don't have to walk to the wall unless you want to. Let's go to the next slide. Some of the advanced capabilities that we have include IR neighbor detection. So imagine you're, sort of in a party situation or a gathering in a room. And as new people come into the room, you go over and you greet them and you welcome them. That's exactly what the concept is behind IR neighbor detection. So basically, as you click and go, each chassis, you attach the power over Ethernet and you put it into the sheet, attach it magnetically to the sheet. It automatically detects and they talk to each other. So you don't have to map out the tiles. That's automatically done for you. This saves, 30 minutes to an hour of time on a wall installation. We also have a patented approach to electronic seam correction. For example, if the subsequent tiles are too close, that'll get you a bright or white line. If they're a little bit spaced further apart, then it'll get you a dark line. Our mechanical system is, again, built to high tolerances. So this minimizes the need for seam correction. But sometimes, when you're joining two sheets together, there is a little bit of work that needs to be done on the seam correction. And I also mentioned the AutoMatch and the anti-aging capability, which are quite unparalleled in the industry. Next slide. The flexibility. the elimination of the sneaker net. We actually have to walk to the wall, where you have to download software to a PC platform, has now been eliminated. You can use a browser, any browser that's HTML5 compatible, whether it be Internet Explorer, Safari, Firefox, or even Chrome, on any platform, desktop, laptop, tablet, or even a smartphone. Okay, so you don't have to, you can connect wirelessly to the wall through the network. All you need is access to that IP address of the LED controller themselves. There's no software. It's all browser based. You can get this remotely. You can set up alerts and traps with SNMP 2.0, and you can basically, let's say you're at home after hours, something goes wrong with the wall. You can go into the system and you can see what's going wrong. You can do the debugging and make corrective actions, make adjustments on the fly from wherever you are, whether that be across town, across the country, or even in another part of the world. Next slide. Again, this shows some of the, easy ways that you can manage it. I did mention SNMP, traps and alerts, which are very powerful. You can push software and firmware updates anywhere from the world via a variety of platforms. The top slide shows you the dashboard, as we call it, which is a single at-a-glance, diagnostics that kind of tell you how the wall is doing. And then you can dive down into each one of those different icons on the left column that allow you to get more information. A really useful piece is our heat temperature map. This is a really, easy way of looking. If you get an alert that there's some overheating, right? If your aircon goes down or something happens, it's a bright sunny day and the sun's directly, putting heat onto the LED display, you can get an alert from SNMP 2.0. You can go and look at the heat map and adjust the aircon appropriately, so that the wall can then be operated within the normal operational parameters. Next slide. All right, well, that finishes up my piece. Dave's going to take over and talk a little bit more about Christie.
Thanks, Ted. Just wanted to close things out and then get to the questions. As you can see, we're uniquely positioned to help you on the LED solution side with our advanced mechanical design, our engineers that are on the job, and of course, we have an integrated solution that has all the pieces in the solution stack that just work together, and you can get them all from one source. We also stand behind our products, as Ted said, and we have the strongest warranties on the market. Every time we sell an LED wall, we do inventory a supply of the pixels from the same bin and batch for the customer, so that ultimately, if you have to repair a module, then you can repair that module to match, and you can do it at one of our repair centers around the world fairly conveniently and quickly. And so it offers peace of mind for the customer and of course anybody involved in the project. And finally, I just wanted to mention, so the MicroTiles LED product is manufactured near Toronto, Canada, at one of our factories on a robotic line, so that it reaches like exacting tolerances, so that it basically just does click together and there's not much to it. We also pursue system level certification on the product so that there isn't site certification required. And then a number of the system components can be pre-delivered so that you can expedite the installation process based on your construction schedule. The top right picture, it's actually a picture in the engineering lab where they're testing a 4K wall. There's actually just 2K there, 2 HD walls stacked actually, and they're just assembling it and testing it. But you can see there the fine detail and super contrast that MicroTiles LED does offer. And with that, I wanted to close out the formal presentation. I see we have a couple of questions, and I want to open things up. If you want to mute and ask a question or drop one in the queue, we're happy to answer them, and we will also send a link to the recording over the coming week. Thank you.
All right, and I'm going to kick it off. I see a question from Corey. How is access to the UI managed? Are there credentials for users, and can they be tiered? So yes, and I'm sorry, I usually mention that in my presentation because, you know, obviously especially for mission critical control rooms, security is a vital concern. So yes, there is both password protection, you know, according to, you know, Christie kind of complies with the most rigorous, you know, standards for you know, those practices of security. And there are ways to, you know, limit access of, you know, certain capabilities, you know, to certain levels of different types of users. So, you know, for example, you know, our Christie technicians, AEs, have, you know, super advanced, you know, capabilities. We also give many of those, you know, access to our integrator partners that we've trained. And then in addition, there can be lower levels, you know, to the IT managers at the end customer, and then even just the most basic of commands to the, you know, the end user, just so all they can do is turn it on, turn it off, you know, increase, decrease brightness, you know, switch sources, those kinds of things. So Corey, I hope that answers your question. Is there an environmental rating? Michael asks, for the MicroTiles. Is it IP65? No, Michael. Well, yes and no. Yes, we have an environmental rating, but it is not IP65. It's IP30. So it's meant for you know, fixed indoor installations. It's not an outdoor product. Let's see. Okay, good. You're welcome, Michael.
I had one, Ted. They were asking about how you can offset the tiles by just a single pixel.
Oh yeah, and that is part of our advanced image processing. And you know, it just when you go into the system, you can sort of override the neighbor detection, which I mentioned. And, you know, basically when you offset, you know, by a number of pixels, then the sensors don't align. And therefore you can go in and you can manually map it, you know, again, down to 1 pixel. So everybody else in the industry, to my knowledge, you have to have, you know, offsets of increments of cabinets, right? So a 27-inch cabinet is, you know, more than a foot tall. So you have to go in, and each increment is one, you know, 1 foot increments. And, you know, that doesn't give you the nice blend. With MicroTiles LED, you know, 1 pixel is, you know, 1.5 millimeter or less. You can do the offset. It's, you know, it's pretty incredible. Francois, you're welcome. We're glad you love MicroTiles LED. We appreciate it. Appreciate your business, everybody. Any other questions? I'll just stay online if there's other questions. You know, feel free if you'd like to come off mute if you want to ask a question verbally, or you can. Oh, Corey's got another question. Great. He's asking about storage of the same bins for future repair. Are spares provided as a part of the quote? So yes, to both. So, and we do it, you know, again, it's the same bin and batch. The exact same LEDs that are put onto the module boards are, you know, kept on reels and shipped with the wall. Here's how we do it. So when the wall is shipped to our Christie facility nearest to your installation, we pull the reels of LEDs, and we have a separate warehouse, and we log those reels and store them according to your project number. Okay, so we safely maintain them so they don't get lost. So what happens is, in the unlikely event of an LED failure, if that does occur, then you can hot swap a new module board in from your spares. We provide a recommended 5% spares, although on mission critical applications, I've seen some customers go up to as many as 10% because they just wanted that much assurance. It's really overkill, but again, that's what they really wanted. That was their objective, so we're glad to do it. So you just hot swap the module boards. Again, they auto match to the wall. You take the damaged module board and you ship it back to a Christie repair facility that's closest to you. And at that time, we pull your reel. We repair the pixels and return them very quickly. Usually it takes us a week or less to turn it back, and that way the old one comes back, and you can just either replace it on the wall if you want, or more likely you just put it back up on the shelf and use it if you need to down the road. It's all part of the quote. It's all included: the 5% spares, the extra spools of LEDs. Let's see. Andrew is asking, what is flexibility with eight 4K solutions in a 24/7 application? Wow, 8 4K to resize and move the content. That's a pretty advanced requirement, and Andrew, and I think we've done control rooms like that with MicroTiles, and also on some of our other product lines, we've done large sportsbook walls with many windows on a huge. It was well over 8 4K. I think it was 12 4K displays. So in those cases, that's where you would really use the spider technology to bring in multiple sources and to map it, because it becomes more of like an event. And the spider is really best suited to manage all of the different sources and all the different locations. It's also possible to do it with Terra, but really, when you're having that many sources that powerful, I would say that a spider is your best choice. But again, Andrew, let's get you engaged with our custom fulfillment team. Our AEs are standing by to help you, with that design criterion. Once we know more about your project, we can easily meet your needs. All right. Thank you, Andrew, for that question. And thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. And Michael's asking for some specifications. Those are easily obtained at www.microtiles.com, or if you prefer to look at not only MicroTiles LED, but our other really high value products like Apex, Core Plus, and Core Series, you can go to www.Christie LED. And Adriano is asking, can you send a PDF of the presentation? I'll leave that to Dave Roebuck and help coordinate and get you the information. I believe we're going to put a recording of this up on the internet as well, so it's accessible. If you'd like to replay it, or if you're integrator, partner, consultant, you can show this presentation to your clients, your end customers. Any other questions?
We'll definitely be posting up the presentation, and we can work to get you a copy of the presentation as well.
All right. I don't see any other questions. And again, thank you everybody for your time. We really appreciate your business. You know, and I hope, you know, this MicroTiles LED just talks a little to the respect that we have, to, you know, for all of you as our valuable, you know, customers, that the thought, you know, the mindfulness that we put into designing our products. And again, you can go to www.microtiles.com or www.christieled.com for additional details. Again, thank you for your time and your consideration.